All right, everybody, welcome in. Welcome in. Let's see. Ooh, numbers going up quickly. 313, fantastic. You love to see it. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give folks a few minutes to get in here. My name is Chris Aviles. I'm the product evangelist over here at GamePlan, and excited to welcome into our Esports and Minecraft Education webinar, where we're going to talk about some pathways to learning and ways that we can leverage Minecraft and GamePlan in the classroom to engage kids with some fun stuff around career, education, teamwork, leadership, social skills, all the good stuff. So, thank you all for joining. 24, 25, very nice. Very nice, very nice, exciting. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself, say hello in the chat, meet your fellow webinarees, attendees. Let's see, we got Pia's here, William, Garrett, we got Boas, Melissa, Victoria. We got the one and only Pia, who is the wonderful lady behind the scenes who makes all our webinars possible. She's also responsible for our social media content and a lot of our excellent marketing. So shout out to Pia for helping me get all of this organized. We got Carl's here. Welcome, everybody. We'll give it another 20 or so seconds before we get started. A lot to cover today. A lot to cover in our webinar. Esports and Minecraft Education, Pathways to Learning and Careers. Wonderful. Hitting up into 30s. Very nice. Yeah, so let's get started. Really nice to have everybody join us. My name is Chris Aviles. I am the product evangelist over here at GamePlan, but on top of that, I have been an educator here in New Jersey for 17 years, and a lot of that time has been using Minecraft in the classroom. Even before Minecraft Education existed, even before, if you are somebody who remembers Minecraft Education Edition back in the day, and even before that, I was using Bedrock in the classroom when a student asked me if he could build the Globe Theater in Minecraft. I think it was back in maybe 2012 when I was teaching. And yeah, he built the Globe Theater in Minecraft. I had no idea what Minecraft was, but he came in with this really cool project, and he flew around the Globe Theater and talked to us about Shakespeare and the Groundlings, because if you couldn't tell, I was a high school English teacher. And ever since, I have always fallen in love, with the power of Minecraft in the classroom. But recently left the classroom because I fell in love with GamePlan, and really excited to show you today how GamePlan can be used to make Minecraft even easier to manage for the teacher. Because a lot of times, right, if you're not familiar with Minecraft, a lot of teachers aren't gamers, and the thought of using Minecraft in the classroom with 24, 25 kids can be very intimidating. But with Minecraft Education and with GamePlan, I think today you're going to see that it really is not too bad. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to model for you what a one-off lesson would look like in Minecraft Education Edition using GamePlan. What we have prepared for you today is what we call the Chicken Build Challenge. And what's really neat is Minecraft can be used for a lot of asynchronous building, a lot of teamwork for kids, and that teamwork can ultimately help kids grow socially, emotionally, academically, right? And that academically can be through whatever challenge you give them. And so again, today, I'm going to have my teammate over at GamePlan. His name is Garrett. Garrett is not much of a Minecrafter. We did a 1-hour crash course in Minecraft not too long ago, and he's going to show you his chicken building skills. And so Garrett's going to help us out when we get into the live build portion of our esports challenge. But ultimately, right, it's going to, what we're working on here is we're going to walk you through kind of from start to finish on what a lesson could look like in your classroom using GamePlan, using Minecraft in our curriculum. And so I'll go ahead and I'm in the command center here. I got my 3 screens going. I'm going to start by sharing with GamePlan. And right off the bat, when I talk to other teachers, one of the things I want them to know is that Game Plan is an LMS. It is meant to replace whatever LMS you're currently using, and you're going to be happy that you did, because the easiest way to explain it is it's really like Google Classroom on steroids. It's going to feel very familiar because a lot of the creation tools, like creating your classroom, is going to feel just like Google Classroom. However, you're going to notice a lot of features that teachers have been clamoring for when it came to, being Google Classroom users. We have that all built into Game Plan. And so right off the bat, because I want to get into the build challenge and I want you to kind of see a whole lesson start to finish, I've already made my classroom. But again, the process is very similar to making it on Google Classroom, super easy. I've already added my student. You can kind of even get a picture of who is in here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump in. So this is what my classroom looks like. I've already actually scheduled my lesson. And so the kids, in class would be coming in. I probably would have told them, hey, on Wednesday, we are going to do our Build a Chicken Challenge. Get excited, be ready. I've already assigned this to them. And here's what the lesson looks like. And this is one of the first reasons that you don't have to be intimidated to get started with Game Plan and Minecraft Education Edition, is you'll notice that we have teacher instructions here for you when it comes to all of our curriculum. So whether you are checking out our Minecraft Education, esports course we've built for middle schoolers, or any of our other content, right? We make sure that we have instructions for everything, right? Because we have great game design curriculum, we have great interactive media and production curriculum. And so knowing that even though you may not be an expert, we have the tools that you need to be successful. And a lot of times it starts with the teacher instructions. And so for this lesson, what we're going to do first is we're going to introduce the lesson to our kids. We're going to get started with kind of this 15-minute period of design thinking meets Castle SEL standards, where the kids are going to divide into teams and they're going to divide into roles. And then they're going to go through a brainstorming and feedback session. Ultimately, they're going to build a chicken. And then, at the end, you want to think about students sharing out, everybody talking about their chicken, what they built, and how they came up with the idea. So we have those teachers' instructions here, along with the materials and other preparation you may need to do in advance, and that will follow you throughout the lesson, which is really nice. So you always have that. I have taken the liberty of aligning this lesson to standards already. And so because the kids are going to be working in teams, I've aligned it to some of the Castle skills, right? So relationship skills, self-management, social awareness, knowing how to work in a team, knowing how to do your job on a team and support others in doing their job. I've also aligned this to the CSTA standards, level 2 and level 3, for 6th to 8th grade. But then I also threw in a standard here, right, for our 9th to 10th graders. And so you can kind of see that we have the ability, right, to deliver content, or even create your own content that is standards aligned. And then we also use the ISTE standards for students as well. And so you can see this lesson, along with all of our content, already comes standards aligned. And one of the other cool features I like to show as teachers are getting ready to use some of our coursework is, you saw the teacher instructions, you saw the standards. One of my favorite things that we have is a progress section. So as kids are working through the lesson or the unit, you can see where they are. And so you can see I've added myself as a student, but you can also see Garrett is at the start of the lesson because we're about to do it for you. And so Garrett will be going along today's lesson as I'm talking to you, about it as the role of a teacher. Garrett will be following along in the role of the student, and this progress will update. And again, if my mission today is to show you not just how Game Plan can make your life easy as your teacher and help you deliver this content, right? It's also to point out tips along the way. And so one of my favorite things when using Game Plan in the classroom is always checking progress, right? If I have a lesson or a unit that is taking multiple days before class comes in, one of the first things I love to do is check my progress area and see just where every student is. Because if they're working independently or they're working in small groups, knowing who's a little bit behind, knowing who's a little bit ahead is going to let me prioritize what students I work with, right? Who do I talk to first? Who do I check in with while they're working on the different, lessons and units for whatever it is that we're doing that day? And so the idea that I can have a quick snapshot of where my students are, who has completed or not completed what lessons or activities, is something that I love here too. And then finally, I have quick access to my gradebook. But one of my favorite teaching tools that I always love to point out is this present lesson button. And so it is true that you can get game plan curriculum, and it can be used out of the box by a teacher or anybody else who has never taught the topic before. And in a lot of ways, it can actually teach itself because it is self-paced, self-directed. Kids can move through the lessons and complete it, on whatever schedule somebody assigns it to them. But to me, right, the learning is always going to be best with the teacher there leading the way. And so I always like to point out when I'm talking to teachers and doing webinars like this is that we do have a present lesson button. And what that does is it turns the content into a slideshow that you can use to start and do some direct instruction with your class. And so imagine you are in my classroom. Imagine you just walked in. Maybe we did our do now. But ultimately, it's time to start the lesson. I'm going to hit the present button and, imagine yourself now going to fill you in on a little bit about what we're doing today. And so I'll talk to the kids. I'll say, hey, what we're doing today is we're going to be working in teams and we're going to build a Minecraft chicken that represents collaboration, creativity, and innovation. And I remind them, right, what should they be doing? Well, I want them to tell a story. I want them to plan, build, and work together. And I want them to understand that they're going to be working with a time constraint, right? Because a lot of that, if you are somebody like me who's a big fan of design thinking, knowing the constraints of a build, right, is really important, knowing the constraints of a challenge. So if they're going to be building a chicken that tells a story, but they only have 20 minutes, that gives them an idea on the scale or the scope of what they can do. And then I always let them know, hey, at the end of everything we do, you guys are going to be sharing out and you're going to be showing off what it is that you built. And so when that clock stops, they're going to take a picture of their chicken. They're going to use the in-game camera and they're going to upload their chicken into Game Plan. And then we can also take a look at what they've built as well. And so for the lesson as well that I made is I always like to kind of give roles for students to fill, right? So in this scenario, this lesson is meant to be in students in groups of 5, and they're going to work together. But even giving some of those roles, right, is really valuable. Let me see if I can move myself out of the way here. Too big. There we go. And so when you look at the roles, you have the master builder, right? And a lot of these roles, I try to be strategic. My master builder is probably going to be the person who is an expert at Minecraft. They know the blocks, they know how to build, and that's going to be the person who's helping the team make sure that they get that chicken finished in 20 minutes. My design thinker, their job is going to be to keep everybody talking, but also make sure everybody takes a turn to talk. And if you've taught a lot of project-based learning like I have, it's great to have somebody, right, have a kid in a role who a lot of times forces kids to talk, invites them into the conversation. Hey, Garrett, what do you think? We haven't heard from you, right? So somebody who guides the conversation, keeps people on task is always a wonderful role to have. The creative spark, right? When you look at that design thinking process, when you do a brainstorm session, you should have somebody who's driving as many creative ideas as quickly as possible. Right. I always tell the kids we're not worried about shooting down ideas right now during this brainstorming session. We are going to get as many as possible on paper. And then when we move to the feedback section, that's when we start to, right, kind of feather, our build here. We have a timekeeper, right? Somebody who's responsible for making sure everybody's contributing, everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. A timekeeper, beyond keeping people on schedule, is also great to keep people in their roles, because a lot of times, right, if folks don't do their job, the job doesn't get done. So making sure they're doing their job and not everybody's job is something that I've always found valuable. And then the presenter is really interesting too, is there's a lot of fear around public speaking. So having a role where a kid who's comfortable public speaking, I've always enjoyed. But when working with Minecraft, having the presenter is a way for a kid who's never played Minecraft before and is maybe a little bit intimidated. That's a role that they can fill until they get a little bit more comfortable, right? So a little bit behind the curtain when I'm designing projects for Minecraft and the types of roles is, you have that kid who's a master Minecraft builder. You really want to harness his energy. But if you have some kids who are nervous and never done it, something like a presenter or a timekeeper is a great way to keep them involved, even though they're not familiar with how to move in Minecraft with, the WASD keys. So a little bit there about the design of this lesson. And so what we would work on is then moving to that, next stage. Let's say, okay, here we go. We have 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and let's get our roles. Let's get our responsibilities. And again, I've always loved adding sentence stems, sentence starters for kids, because when we think about helping them grow socially and emotionally, when we're using this esports competition, right, to bring out the best in kids, a lot of times it's really helpful to give them sentence starters. So you also see sentence starters throughout the lesson, right? Things that kids can say to each other, right? When it comes time to have conversations, when it comes time to challenge ideas, when it comes time to help pull creativity out of kids, a lot of times you need to help them know the right words to use. And so here we go, roles and responsibilities. Hey, the clock hasn't started yet. Your team gathers to plot your chicken's destiny. And right, I hit them with a design thinking question, a how might we question, right? So that way they know clearly what is, what is it that they're building? What is the purpose of the challenge, right? The Build a Chicken challenge here is how might we design and build a Minecraft chicken that represents creativity, collaboration, and innovation. And so I give them, 5 minutes to go ahead and brainstorm. And then we can move them right through that brainstorming session. And then we get them ready to figure out, right, what is that next step after we brainstorm, right? And so the way I always tell kids is brainstorm is done. I wrote here, you have a wild roster of chickens on your table. But before you charge into the arena, it's time to tighten up your game plan. And you can see what I did there. But that's also to make sure kids understand, right, through this design thinking process, through this build challenge, through this esports challenge, the ability to take your crazy ideas, because kids have a lot of times no problem coming up with the crazy ideas. How can they feather that down into a chicken that could be completed in 20 minutes? And one of the ways I also like to do that is I like to work in some of these checks for understanding. And so you can see what I did in this particular lesson, in this particular section, is before kids start this feedback session, right? They have to answer a question. So that's one way also that I can make sure every kid gets involved. So before I allow them to go from brainstorming to feedback, I say, hey, time. Okay, everybody, you're going to see a question, right? What's one idea from your brainstorm that you're most excited to see in your chicken build, right? And that gives every kid the opportunity to think and then respond before we move in, because you'll find there's a lot of excitement. So building in little checkpoints and stop signs for kids to think about what they're doing, to think about others, to think about what's going to be happening in the future and their role in it, I think is really powerful. And so I built in a little check here to slow those kids down. And because I'm in the teacher view, right, this is really kind of neat too. When we talk about like a lot of the features that I am really impressed with on game plan, when we build in our questions and a lot of our responses, what's neat is if you're familiar with Edpuzzle, if you're familiar with Pear Deck, the ability to turn something interactive, you can see there's two students in the class, one has answered, right? As students answer, I can also go through and show off what it is that they're saying, right? Which is a really neat kind of feature. But as we go through, right, the brainstorm is done. Again, you'll see some sentence stems. You have 5 minutes to narrow down your chicken designs to your favorite. And I remind them, hey, when we're doing, right, this feedback section, that's awesome, let's keep it, or that's cool, but does it fit our story? Love it, but what's the most important part of it we can actually build in 20 minutes? Just things that they may need to say to eventually come to an agreement, right? So 5 kids coming to an agreement in 5 minutes on what chicken they're going to build and how they build it can be tough. And that's why, too, the design thinker and the master builder, they're going to, make sure what people are planning is possible and think about what blocks they're going to be using. The timekeeper, right, is going to be not just responsible for keeping everybody on this 5-minute feedback timetable, but also making sure that, hey, are we thinking about, right, can we scale it down? Can we simplify it? What's the most important part of this to capture, right, our design, our story about our chicken? And can we get it done in 20 minutes? And so ultimately, right, where we're at now is my kids came in, My kids got a 5-minute brainstorm session after I told them what we were working on today. They got a 5-minute feedback section. And now it's going to be, right, what everybody is really waiting for. And that's going to be, right, the 20-minute, chicken build off. And so again, kind of reminding them during the build what their roles and what they could be doing, what they should be doing. The clock is always going to be their biggest opponent. Every second's going to matter. I probably would have done some lead up activities to a lesson like this to make sure kids, number one, knew the appropriate way to talk to each other, right, during this lesson, because a lot of times kids will want to yell, they'll want to scream, but I probably would have led them through some communication lessons on how they could get their point across in a, time sensitive or high intensity situation. And I probably would have done some work with them, like I did with Garrett, to make sure they knew how to log into Minecraft, to make sure they knew the basics of, moving around Minecraft, accessing the blocks and stuff like this, right? So that's one thing I always remind teachers of when they are getting into working with Minecraft, is the first time kids see Minecraft, it should not be the first time you expect them to learn with Minecraft. And we think about kids as being digital natives and they know everything about games. And you're going to have kids who don't play Minecraft. They're not going to know how to move. They may have played on a console. And if they're playing on a Chromebook at school with a mouse, that's going to be totally different than they maybe play on their Nintendo Switch, or they play on their Xbox, or my 6-year-old plays on his iPad with his thumbs and fingers, right? So it's understanding, a little bit about that world and how you can make sure that every kid has a fair opportunity to be successful when it comes to this build challenge, right? And so what I'll do now, as our kids, for instance, get ready to jump into Minecraft, I will load up Minecraft, which I've got running in the background here. Let me see. Yep, you guys can see that. And let me go full screen so it's a little bit more clear for you guys. But if you've never seen Minecraft Education, it's fantastic. It really is. It's a version of Minecraft, right, that is made for schools, and it has, most of that is features that make it more manageable for the teachers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how quickly I'm going to make a world. I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit play. I'm going to go to library. And you can see all the different topics, and they have a lot of cool stuff. They have some built-in build challenges of their own. So if you like the chicken challenge, but you want something different, right, you have a lot of different options. But where I'm specifically going to go, because this is going to be, imagine 5 groups of 5 kids having a head-to-head challenge at who's going to come with the coolest chicken that represents creativity and innovation. I'm going to head over here to the esports section, and I'm going to head over to build battles, and I'm going to head over to the world famous Creative Coliseum. And the Creative Coliseum, you may have seen in action on ESPN for the Battle of the Boroughs, or, in a number of other places, but this is one of the best worlds when it comes to hosting your build challenges, because you're going to see some of these really cool features already built in. Now, by default, this is in single player, but what I need to do is I need to open it up and I need to host it, so that way, right, students can join. And so in this case, I'm going to tell my friend Garrett, right, my student Garrett, your code is going to be cookie, water bucket. Right, which is, is there a more fun code than that? Cookie, water bucket. Now, if you are playing at home like you've been invited to, you'll notice that if you, try to join a world and you try to come to cookie, water bucket, it's not going to work. And that's because Garrett and I share what's called the same tenant. And basically means Garrett can join this world because he's in the same school as I am as a teacher. So people who have Minecraft, but they're outside the school or outside your school district, they're not going to be able to join. So what Garrett's going to do is he's going to go ahead and he's going to pick a team. While he's doing that, I'm going to come over to my friend here. I'm going to get an admin key, which lets the game know that I am the teacher and I'm going to be observing, right? And Garrett is not, so this is important to know, right? Garrett's not going to have the same options as I did, because as the creator of the world, as the teacher of this world, I have different options than he has. So what he did is he had the option to pick a team, and he's picked the red team. As the teacher, right, I could do a couple different things. One of the things I want to do first is I'm going to set my build timer, and we know that this is a 20-minute timer. So I'm going to go ahead and extend it. You can see the round length is now 20 minutes. I'm going to run back over to registration. If I needed to move kids around, I could totally do that. But ultimately, I'm not going to join a team because I'm going to be observing. I'm going to hit start game. And you are going to see a countdown. I'm going to fly. And through the power of Minecraft Education, Garrett has been sucked into the red team's world. And so Garrett now has 20 minutes. And this is going to be, quite a task for Garrett because he's got 20 minutes to build his own chicken. He is likely going into his inventory. He's probably going to be looking for some blocks, and he's going to be, grabbing some blocks to build his chicken with, right? Because we are in creative mode. But one thing that is really neat that I will point out is I'm not on the red team. So I cannot enter the red build space. And because Garrett is on the red team, he cannot leave the red team's build space. So it's easy to see how you could potentially have a classroom of 25, 30 kids all building in teams of 5 in their own block, in their own build areas, and they can't necessarily mess with each other. And so that I always thought was really neat because I know for me, one of the scariest things was, well, why can't some kid just run over and destroy somebody else's build, right? So in the Creative Coliseum, this build challenge, it has tools for the teacher already built in, including this really cool telescope. So if I need to check out what's going on the green team, I could do that. But, as somebody who's a big fan of esports, I've always tried to find ways to get involved. And so things that I've done, beyond these build challenges, believe it or not, I've had kids who have been too nervous to build in class. And so I might find a role very similar to mine where they might be shoutcasting, right? They might be calling the action. So if you've ever seen, the Battle of the Burrows on ESPN or some of the other, Minecraft esports content where schools complete different challenges, right? There's usually a shoutcaster. Game Plan had the privilege of shoutcasting the Miami build challenges where we brought together, the Florida build challenges where we brought together Broward County, Miami-Dade, and I want to say Palm Beach school districts down in Florida. And we had them compete in a build challenge around what a school would look like in the future that was climate change ready, right? And so we can see Garrett looks like he's starting on the legs. And so, I might have kids shoutcast on top of the other roles. I've seen this stuff streamed to Twitch, but you just think about really both for students and even the teacher, the creativity is going to be your only limitation. And so there's always a lot of different fun things that we've done. And so let me see, I'm going to we'll do a little scan around what Garrett's up to. And so while he's working, we're going to come back and we're going to jump back into Game Plan for a second while Garrett's building. We'll come check on him in a minute. But just wanted to take you through, some of the other, things that I love about Game Plan, because even as I was preparing for this, right, one thing that I always do as an educator is anytime I finish a lesson, and sometimes it could be between periods, right? I may do a lesson for period 1 and maybe it doesn't go so great, or there's things I want to change. I might make those changes right from one period to the next, let alone 1 year to the next or one semester to the next. And so as Garrett's building, and, I wanted to take the opportunity to show you that one thing that I love about Game Plan when I was using it as a teacher before I joined the team was I got this really great, ready to go out of the box content, but I also had the ability to change anything I didn't like. And so what was always neat for me was the ability to just take any content hit the edit button, and then I can change it. So let's say that, you use the Build a Chicken Challenge. Maybe you want to add your own spin to it. Maybe you teach on a 90-minute block and you want to do extended times, or you're on a 45-minute block and you want to shrink some of the times, or you don't like the roles I created, right? The beauty of game plan is we always want to be a tool to support the teacher, not replace the teacher. And so all of our content can be edited. And what's beautiful is when you edit the content, it is very similar to something like a Google Doc, where when you make yourself a copy, where you make your own copy, that copy becomes yours and it stays updated, right? So if you take our out-of-the-box content and you edit it, that content will now live under the My Content area. And every time you go back and you assign a lesson to a kid, you can assign it out of that My Content area. And that means all of your changes has been saved and they can be reused time and time again. And so when I was teaching with game plan, I taught with game plan out of the box, but then I would go home after each lesson and I would make some changes that I liked. And a lot of times it was me just adding, as an English teacher, I added a ton of current events. I also was teaching in a high school where we had to have a informational text-based lesson that involved math, believe it or not, right? So we had to do a lot around data literacy. And so kids had to read things and then they had to use stats and facts to back up what they were doing. I went through and I really made all of the content fit exactly what I needed to do my job as a teacher, right? To meet the expectations of my district. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that everybody at home knew that you have the ability to make, any changes to this content that you want. And to me, that was always one of the coolest things about game plan is I eventually turned all the content into exactly what I wanted it to be for my kids, which was always really neat. And so we'll switch back over. We'll go check in with Garrett and see how he's doing. So let me stop. And then let me switch this button and do this thing over here. This should get me back to Garrett. Beautiful. So we can see we have the legs. He's getting the body underway. And I'm not kidding, friends, when I tell you that Garrett's first time playing Minecraft was last week when I said, hey, do you want to build a chicken for me during the webinar? And he jumped right in. And here he is in his probably his third chicken attempt. And so you can see too, one of the nice things is Garrett has the ability to fly around because we are in what's called creative mode. And I always remind teachers and parents when we do these types of things, we think that these kids are digital natives and they know how to play every video game and they understand, and it's not always the case, right? And so one of the things I love about Minecraft is they always have the control tips right there. So you can hit H and you can see how it is that you can do everything, which I find to be super helpful. I would even actually print out, because again, I would imagine most of our kids are going to be using Chromebooks when it comes to Minecraft education. I would actually print out the keys to move around, right? So if you're on a computer or Chromebook and you're playing Minecraft, you move with WASD, or control makes you go faster, shift makes you fly down, double space makes you fly, holding spacebar makes you get higher. I would print out little cards for my kids to keep next to them because not every kid knew Minecraft. But on the other side of things, you have some kids who are super passionate about Minecraft. And so, again, and if you want to see it, you can. We did a game-based learning webinar a couple months ago where we talked about how to teach with video games in the classroom. And knowing how to deal with your expert Minecraft kids is really important, because these are the kids that as soon as you say you're going to build something in Minecraft, their ears are going to go off. They're going to be so excited, and how do you harness that energy, right? And so one of the things that I always do when it comes to using Minecraft in the classroom is I have kids, just like I may have a kid who shoutcasts because they don't necessarily like the building part. I sometimes have kids who love the building part. And what I do is I turn them into coaches, right? So remember we talked about sometimes you may need to have, take some time to show kids how to get into Minecraft, show them how to build, let them play around, probably let them use TNT and light stuff on fire just to get it out of their system. I always try to find who is my Minecraft expert. And what I do is I empower them to be coaches. And their job is to work with other kids, who maybe aren't as familiar with Minecraft. And what's great about that is I put them in something called expert mode. And this is what's really cool is when you put a kid in expert mode, have them keep their hands behind their back and tell them they are not allowed to touch the mouse or the keyboard of the person that they're helping. Because you will find a lot of kids who are super passionate about Minecraft is they will try to explain it. They will become frustrated. And then they will basically say, let me do it. And they do the thing where they elbow over the kid. They take the mouse, they take the keyboard, and they do it for them, right? If we're talking about, some of the transferable skills when it comes to building in Minecraft, a lot of them are going to be social and emotional. Knowing how to communicate with somebody, right? Especially when maybe they don't understand or, they're feeling frustrated that they've tried to explain E is for inventory, then type in the block you're looking for. It's really great to have a way to help kids, work through that conversation without taking over. And so expert mode and having them keep their hands behind their back is something that I have always found really valuable, right? So thinking about, jobs and things that kids can do if they're not so into Minecraft, because some kids will have to warm up. And I'll tell you, sometimes your girls are going to be more intimidated than your boys, right? So finding ways for them to warm up. And then the last tip I'll give you when it comes to building with Minecraft is always have a paper version of the lesson that you could give kids who are not following directions, right? So what I might do for something like this is I might have some graph paper. And if I have to talk to a kid, for whatever reason, maybe they're just so, worked up that they just can't focus or they're otherwise disrupting the class, right? I'll tell you, the first time you have a kid go complete the activity on paper and not be able to complete the activity in Minecraft, the behavior problem is gone because nobody wants to do the paper version, of building a chicken, on paper versus building it in Minecraft. And so my kids know that every time we use Minecraft, right, we have a paper version that if they aren't behaving themselves and they're not following my expectations about how they talk to each other, right, not being toxic and stuff like that, they know that the paper version is waiting for them. And I think the last thing I'll share when it comes to some of the classroom management tips and stuff like that is, what you're seeing today is what I kind of call like a one-off Minecraft experience is, you're experiencing in real time, basically an hour-long Minecraft lesson. For some reason, when people are thinking about game-based learning or using Minecraft in the classroom, sometimes they believe that Minecraft is the only thing that happens in the classroom. And that couldn't be further from the truth. My favorite way to use Minecraft was the carrot at the end of a lesson. I used to love coming to the Creative Coliseum, no matter what we were learning, right? We maybe read, like I had said, that student built the Globe Theater in Minecraft, right? I always loved to come to the Creative Coliseum and I'd say, hey, we learned about Shakespeare this unit. Right? In the Creative Coliseum on Friday, you are going to, show me what you learned. And I always thought that was great, right? There's some really creative educators who do full-blown history lessons, or if you haven't seen Minecraft Education Edition, the stuff that they have around chemistry, the chemistry set is fantastic. There's a great lesson that I always enjoy around bees and having your own farm and having your own bees and stuff like that. But for me, as an English teacher, right, again, whether we read a book or whatever it is that we were doing, I basically would say, hey, how would you like to show me what you learned? We just finished, Of Mice and Men. Recreate your favorite scene and then be ready to explain to the class why it is your favorite scene or something like that. So just know that Minecraft doesn't have to be all the time. Minecraft on a Friday toward the end of a unit is a lot of times something that gets kids really excited too. So this is a one-off lesson. This realistically could be completed within an hour. Imagine kids excited, they're building, they're communicating, because you set the precedent and the expectations on how they're supposed to talk to each other. They're socializing, and it really comes down to what I always tell my kids is the way that you play video games at home, the way that you play Minecraft at home is not the way that you're going to play Minecraft in school. So we can see it looks like we're getting toward the end of our build challenge with about 4 minutes left. It looks like Garrett has built the chicken's head on the floor. We will check in on that in a second. I'm going to Alt-Tab and check out and see if we have any questions or comments while we give Garrett some time to build. Looks like we still got 30-ish people hanging out. So if anybody would like to comment. I know that we are currently broadcasting out to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Facebook. So not everybody who is watching is necessarily in our StreamYard chat room. So please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions from wherever you're watching. You'll see my email is on my nameplate, chris@gameplan.com. But let's go ahead and bounce back in and check in on Garrett as he wraps up the build. There we go. And you'll notice Garrett cannot escape his build plate, but I'm looking over at my chat over here on the side with Garrett. And Garrett says he's done. Fantastic. So let's say that the timer has expired. And I'm going to kind of do this part out of order so you can see kind of everything, right? So let me show you what would happen in Minecraft first. So the idea here is we finish the build challenge, and then we're going to have presentation where everybody talks about what they've done, and then we're going to award a winner. So first, let me show you as the teacher how I can, go over to my referee. I can end the round, and I'm going to end it early. So you can see the countdown starts, 3, 2, 1. The build is done. Garrett has been released from his build area. And now as the teacher, let me get out of here and let me switch back over to game plan, right? So now think about the transition. We're transitioning off our Chromebooks. We're transitioning out of Minecraft. We're transitioning from building to now our presentations. So let me switch back into game plan. There we go. Right. So in my present mode, I'm over here. Right. And now we have presentation time. Right. The building is over. It's time for the presenter to take center stage. The builder. Right. This is where I always like to have two things happening at once. So the presenter is going to get up and they're going to have 2 minutes to explain to the class what it is they built and why they built it, right? While that's happening, I like to have the master builder is going to grab the in-game camera tool, right? So Minecraft Education has a camera. I have them take some pictures of the chicken and then export those pictures as part of their portfolio. And again, they can upload that into game plan. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But so now imagine we have Garrett up in front of the room. Let me switch back over to our chicken so you can get the full effect, because Garrett has written for me what it is that his chicken represents. So you can see it. And so what Garrett has written is, with game plan and Minecraft education, teachers don't have to run around the classroom like a chicken with their head cut off, right? So you can see the chicken, there's the head on the floor, chicken with his head cut off, not if you're using game plan and Minecraft education. So I thought that was super clever when Garrett revealed during our trial run, that's the way that they were going, chicken with their head cut off, not if you're using game plan. So now let's say, obviously, that was clever. The whole class is laughing. Everybody agrees Garrett should have won, right? You can also do this really fun thing in the Coliseum where you come over to the judge and you have a couple options. You can allow kids to vote. There's a vote feature in here. But you can also, what we'll do in this situation is we will select the winner. So we're going to say red wins. Let's pretend our orange team is in second place and our yellow team is in third place. You can kind of reveal this. This could be a secret. You can have them use the in-game voting system. You can have them use game plan to vote. You can have them just write on a piece of paper and hand it to you. But ultimately, we have a winner. We hit our button, and then we have red team is the winner. And there we go. It's a beautiful thing. I think Garrett left, but he typically would be right here. And there's little sparkles and stuff, but pretty neat. And let's see. What I can do is, oh, there's Garrett. Oh, he's got a little trophy on his head. Feeling good. Big winner. So switching back out. Again, let's pretend as we continue on, we just wrapped up our presentations. The next step is for students to submit their chicken. And for this, I will flip over to student view. So I'm going to click up here. One of the awesome things about Game Plan is you can experience and see everything from a student. So now that I'm in student view, I'm going to click on the assignment. I can see it's in progress. And I'm going to come down here to start assignment. And what this will do is this is going to walk students through how to basically use the in-game camera and then export their chicken pictures in a portfolio and upload that to Game Plan, right? So I always like to have this step-by-step. And again, if they're new to Game Plan, or if they're new to Minecraft, or I haven't had a chance to teach them how to do this before we started the build challenge, I try to have them do it while the presentation's going on. So the master builder, who's probably the most likely kid to know how to do this, I'm going to have them be working on this part, working on this assignment while we're also listening to presentations. And this basically just walks them through, how to find the portfolio. In this scenario, I'm using a Chromebook, but then they could basically choose the files and they can upload. Let's see. Here's the one I took earlier. Go ahead and upload. Save name, choose file. Right. So pretty neat is that we have the ability in Game Plan. I just uploaded a JPEG. You can upload PDFs. You can upload a number of different things. So you can have kids turning in all kinds of different work. I've even gone so far as to have kids turn in Minecraft worlds, right? Their .minecraft world files, and they submit that. And then the assignment is complete. And so we can see it's waiting for grading. And where we can wrap up kind of the student experiences, I always like to end with a reflective journal. So students can kind of, after they, somebody on their team submits the chicken, after we do the presentation, I always like to have everything settled down with a journal, right? It's always nice to have kids reflect and write at the end. And so, I kind of wrote everything as a narrative here, but the arena is quiet, the chickens are built, the stories are controlled, the screenshots are saved, the pressure of the clock is gone, but the challenge isn't truly over, because the best esports teams don't just play, they reflect, right? And so students can each then start their journal, and they can then decide, right, what did this challenge teach me about teamwork under pressure, and how did my role help or challenge or success? You give them, again, I like to always give some types of sentence starters or things to think about, and then ultimately they can answer the journal. So I understand that when I'm frustrated, yelling doesn't make my message any clearer. And you may be surprised, but that is one of the biggest things that my kids report taking away, is a lot of times when they're frustrated in communicating, they will just yell the same thing louder and louder and louder. when they should probably just reconsider the message and rethink about what they're saying. But I'll go ahead and submit my journal, and then we can see that is done on the student side. I can flip back over, and I can go back in from the teacher side, and I can see one student is ready to grade. That would be me. I can see in my progress section, things have been completed and done. And then for the grade book specifically for this lesson, some of it has been set to auto graded, but then I can also go in and I can quick grade if I need to. And if I want to do a full grade, I can come in and I can select the build a chicken lesson. I can then see, right, I'm waiting for grading, and you can see what was submitted, right? So here's the file itself. I can download it and look at it. I could go and see Garrett has not started it, so I can excuse him if he happens to be absent. I can give him a 0 because he didn't do what he's supposed to be doing. Or let's say that Garrett turned in some work that wasn't satisfactory, didn't meet my expectations. I can open it for revision, and I can tell him, let's try again. I can save the results, and Garrett will get the notification that he needs to redo that assignment, or he got a 0 because he didn't do that assignment, or he can read my feedback and he can act on whatever it is that I told him. So a couple different ways that you can grade pretty quick. I love the options, right? If I'm sitting down at home and I'm grading essays and I got to go through things, right, I might sit down and I might go through the more detailed grading process, so I can click between students, very quickly. If I'm doing a more fun, quick lesson, right, my ability to jump in and grade, what I call the quick grade through something like this, I think is really cool too. And then you can actually go right into the grading section from there. But, it's a really easy way to see who did what. It's a really easy way to make sure your teams turned in what they were supposed to. And ultimately, for me, it's never been faster to get assignments out to kids, to grade those assignments once they hand them back, and then get back with the feedback and all that good stuff too. So that's a little bit of the chicken challenge. And so as we wind down, we've got about 5 minutes left. I am happy to take some questions. But ultimately, again, the whole kind of point of what we were working on was giving you perspective on how you can run Minecraft, a one-off kind of experience, pretty quickly, pretty easily, right? I find that having game plan with the lessons ready to go, or my ability to edit those lessons is fantastic. And one of the things that I can do as well, for those of you, let's see, for those of you that are part of the StreamYard audience here, let me see. Let me bring this back on the stage so you can see kind of how quickly I could do this. So I'm going to go, I'm going to jump into my classroom, and I'm going to come over here to members, and I'm going to add students, and I'm going to get a shareable link. And so what I'll do is, for those of you that are here in StreamYard, I'll paste this into the chat. This link will give you the ability to create a game plan account, and you can join my classroom as a student. So that way you can experience and go through the lesson that I just did, right? So the lesson that I just ran through is actually there waiting for you. So if you wanted to, use the present feature and you have Minecraft Education at your school, if you wanted to try, the experience, go for it. I think that you will find game plan helps make a lot of this a lot more manageable, right? When you combine that with the features of Minecraft Education, which is all about making this manageable for the teacher in the classroom, I think it's if nothing else, I hope you walk away today understanding that this doesn't have to be intimidating. If you are not using Minecraft in the classroom and you've never played Minecraft, or maybe you just have seen your kids play Minecraft, it's not intimidating, right? And if you've seen your kids play Minecraft, you know how exciting it is and how engaging it is. As somebody who's been on Minecraft both before and after the Microsoft acquisition, I can tell you it was way harder to use Minecraft in the classroom before Minecraft Education came out. And I can tell you, as somebody who has taught in the classroom using Game Plan and Minecraft, Game Plan really does make it easy to move back and forth between something like Minecraft Education, stuff like that, and bringing it into the classroom and making it as seamless to jump back and forth as possible. So that was me on 3 different screens, pushing a bunch of different buttons. The transitions in the classroom are even easier. And so I will also show quickly, there we go. On our website, we have an entire semester-long curriculum that is just unbelievable. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out, if you want to head over to gameplan.com in the curriculum section, you can go ahead and you can pull down, right, our Minecraft Education, Exploring Careers in Esports. So very similar to what you just saw. We use esports, we use competition, we use the universal hobby of gaming to really just drive not just the social emotional growth of students, right, but also academic growth. So you can tie a lot of these challenges to whatever you're teaching. But we have a full, ready to go, career aligned, gives them a chance to learn about game design fundamentals and cybersecurity. And we've got all kinds of really neat stuff in here. So if you are looking for a semester-long solution that uses Minecraft and you want to bring that to your classroom, definitely come and check it out. And so you can go and see some of the cool stuff that you'll be doing, right? It's based around ELA. And you can grab the course outline right from here, along with watch some videos and check out the units and lessons. So whether you're kind of doing some one-off stuff, build challenges, or you want to get a full-blown semester-long curriculum that we have ready to go here at Game Plan, definitely check it out. Definitely reach out. Thank you, everybody who stopped in and hung out. My name is Chris, and like I said, I'm the product evangelist at Game Plan. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, chris@gameplan.com, and I'd be happy to get you to the right person who can help you really bring this to your classroom in a meaningful way. So thank you all for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and then I will see you for the next webinar. Thanks.